Guys, this is the Honest Outlaw here, and today I want to do a little impromptu review of the Canik TP9 SF V2 versus the Glock 17 Generation 3. And I'll talk about the Generation 4 as well, because I do have a Generation 4 Glock 19. I had Generation 4 Glock 17 as well, so I definitely have experience on the topic. So I'll be pretty much just referencing Glock, you know, Generation 3, 4, on and off throughout the video. Alright, so the first thing I want to talk about is what kind of pistols are these? Both of these pistols are semi-automatic. Both of them are striker fired. Now you can get the TP9 in a double action, single action version, and you can also get it in a single action only version. I prefer the striker fired version. I can honestly deal with the double action, single action as well. I also like that. Single action only, however, is not for me. I do own 1911s, but only because they only come in single action only. But anyway, so I have upgraded the Glock 17. I have not upgraded the TP9. So I won't really be talking about this as an upgraded pistol. I'll be kind of referencing it as if it were stock. So the first thing I want to talk about is the most important category, in my opinion, for semi-automatic pistols is reliability. Which one is more reliable? Well, I would have to say that probably, honestly, I don't know. The Glock is world-renowned to be extremely reliable. I have put this through some ridiculous torture tests. This pistol in itself has been put through a torture test that I have posted where we did the water, mud, sand, and all that stuff, and it did all right. I actually thought it would do a little bit better, but it did way better than a semi-automatic pistol probably should do. I've also shot 380 through this pistol for a video. I have thrown this pistol on the ground. I've done all kinds of stuff to it. You can see there it's got scratches and marks, and it's all beat up, if you can see that. And the durability and reliability of Glocks is just excellent. On the other hand, the TP9, I have shot well over 500 rounds through, and I've never had a single malfunction with this pistol. So honestly, between these two pistols as individuals, I would say right now they're probably even, although this one hasn't been tested and this one has. So I would give the edge to the Glock. As far as track record goes, I would also probably give the edge to the Glock, again, since the Glock is carried by thousands and thousands of police officers, certain militaries. I believe the Navy SEALs switched over to the Glock. Probably not all together. They probably still carry some SIGs, but I'm sure they use the Glock quite a bit. So I would have to say, you know, just as far as track record goes, the Glock's been around. It's all over the world. I got to give the track record to the Glock, although it's not saying the TP9 couldn't get there someday. As far as price goes, let's get that out of the way. Huge win for the TP9. Just to reference these two pistols as they are now, this is the Vickers tactical version of the Glock. I got this pistol for somewhere in the area of $600. Okay, now that came with upgraded sights and mag release and that kind of thing, and this super cool gray color, which I paid extra for just because I like it. I also put an agency arms trigger in it that's about $100, okay? Now I would have to say I'm not a fan of Glock triggers, especially not as much as I used to be. And I would say that right off the bat between these two, with the upgraded trigger, the TP9 trigger is still better. But as far as price goes, this is Glock's new, run around $500 to $550 to $600, depending on where you buy it. This TP9 SF, now this is the version 2 even, can be had for around $350 on a prepper gun shop. This actual pistol itself is going to be selling at Johnson's Guns & More. I'm not exactly sure how much he's selling it for, somewhere in the area of $300 to $400, though I'm sure, because that's what they all go for. So again, this is $300 to $400. This is $500 to $600. Okay, so and sometimes you can even find this for lower than that. You know, you can get used ones of these for $250. That's extremely impressive for me. A $250 gun with some of the ergonomics and features that we're going to talk about in a little bit. Big win. Can't say it enough. Now both of these pistols are 9mm. The Glock can be chambered in 40, 45, 357 SIG, 10 millimeter, all kinds of stuff. So if you're looking for different calibers, probably veer yourself more towards the Glock. Alright, so let's get into ergonomics. That'll really tell the difference between these two pistols. First thing I want to talk about is the back straps. Now the Gen 3, probably the most popular version of the Glock, does not have interchangeable back straps, but the Gen 4 does. Now a lot of people say that they prefer the Gen 3 over the Gen 4. I actually prefer the Gen 4 over the Gen 3 because most of my Gen 4s have been just as reliable as the Gen 3s, and they come with the back straps, they come with the new recoil system. I just prefer that. But as I said, the TP9 for $350 has the interchangeable back straps. Magazine release, each of them do their job really well. I prefer the TP9's magazine release also. I also prefer the TP9's magazine, okay? Now as you can see there, this is a polymer magazine Glock is famous for. That doesn't mean these aren't reliable and durable, they absolutely are. But I just prefer metal magazines. Magazines in the semi-automatic pistol are pretty much the heart of it. If the magazine fails, it doesn't matter how good the gun is, because the gun will fail as well. And not only are they metal magazines, they also have this slit coating on them. It makes them much easier to reload and eject the magazine when you're pressing the mag release. A lot of times with Glocks, you'll see that they'll just get a little burr up and stuff, and you'll press that magazine release and nothing will happen. That's one of the reasons why these base plates are there, so you can grab these and strip them. I honestly don't think you're going to have that issue with a gun like the TP9. Another thing I wanted to bring up about the magazines is this is a 17-round magazine. This is an 18-round magazine. So one extra round never hurt anybody. Also, the TP9's magazines are extremely easy to load. That's another plus as well, especially if you're a smaller statured shooter like my wife, for example. She really likes the TP9 because it's easier for her to load the magazine. If it's easier to load the magazine, it's easier to practice. The more you practice, the better you are. So it means more than you think it does.
I'm not out, but I'm on fire, motherfuckers.
The trigger guard on both of them is fairly squared. If you're one of those weirdos like some guy I know called Jerry Michalek, who shoots with their finger on the trigger guard, you can do it with both of these pistols fairly easily. Both of them have accessory rails. However, the Glock has this kind of douchey accessory rail, which does work, don't get me wrong, but it always kind of upsets me that I have to change out my mounts for my lights from Picatinny to this. With the TP9, you have a full Picatinny rail. So not only, in my opinion, do lights mount a little bit better, but they also mount easier on the TP9. As far as we did mag release, I don't remember if we did trigger or not. If not, we'll do it again. The trigger on the TP9 is better. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's better. You can see on the Glock there, you have a real, obviously they're both fulcrum triggers, but on the Glock, it just seems like it's more difficult to pull the trigger. It just seems like it's more spongy, it's a little bit heavier, and just all around doesn't add to accuracy quite like the TP9's trigger does. As you can see there, when you pull the trigger, you do have some take up, but the take up is almost nothing. As you can see there, it's super easy to take it up, and once you hit that wall, a nice, clean, smooth break. And that really aids in accuracy. If you're talking about accuracy with a handgun, you're talking about sight alignment and trigger control. And if you have a better trigger in this gun than you do this gun, you're almost always going to be more accurate with this gun than you are this gun. Barrel aside, for the most part, handguns are usually more accurate than the shooter. So the ergonomics is what makes a pistol more accurate, in my opinion. And we talked about the sights earlier. One advantage to the Glock sights, even though they are shittier out of the factory than the TP9, is that you can put any sight set in the world on the Glock. The disadvantage to that is that you either have to pay to get it done or end up doing it yourself. For overall ergonomics out of the factory, honestly, this is going to sound crazy, but I have to give the advantage to the TP9. However, a lot of times when I look at a gun, I don't see what it is, I see what it can be. So if you're willing to spend the money, the Glock ergonomics can be better than the TP9. But you'd have to spend a significant amount more money on this gun to make it better than this gun. As far as accuracy goes, I know we touched on that just a second ago, but basically, I honestly, right out of the box, I would have to give the advantage to the TP9, based on the fact that, in my opinion, accuracy has a lot to do with sights and a trigger. Okay, now if my most accurate pistol that I own personally is either my Springfield Armory 1911 or my CZ SP01 AccuShadow. Now, I don't think it's any coincidence that both of those firearms have the best sights and the best trigger out of my gun collection. So, have to give the advantage to the TP9, unless you upgrade the sights and the trigger of the Glock, and then whichever one had better sights and trigger, in my opinion, would be more accurate. So, as far as takedown goes, I normally don't do takedown in these videos, but, you know, I don't know everything, and I learned something the other day that I thought was interesting that I'd like to share as far as takedown goes going on with these videos. Something that I haven't really heard discussed. So let's get into the takedown for a second here. If you're taking down this Glock, basically what you do, you pull the trigger, pull the slide back, pull these levers down, and pull the slide off, right? Same goes for the TP9. Just pull it back a little bit, pull the thing down, slide comes off, right? And then you just pull the slide back, gun works just fine. One thing I wanted to talk about though, even though these are fairly similar in takedown, and if you hadn't been in adverse conditions before, if you've never thrown your gun in mud or anything like that, you would never notice a difference. You can see there these takedown levers are a lot easier to grab a hold of. You have a better ledge and it's easier to pull down than the very small takedown levers of the Glock. Now, why is that important? Well, I always thought that was kind of a marketing thing until I actually, you know, started doing these reliability tests on my channel. And I realized that once I got done with all of them and I tried to take them apart, the M&P was the only one that I could get apart relatively easy because it has a takedown lever. If you get this filled with mud, dirt, and sand and things like that, first of all, these takedown levers don't want to come down, right? And then your gun's wet. Imagine if you dropped your gun in the mud and sand and you had a little bit of time but not much time, and you had to clear those malfunctions. Well, if you can't get your slide off, you can't make the gun work. And a lot of times when you get dirt and grime up in the trigger grip and stuff, you can cause a malfunction that you can't fix until you take the gun apart. So it's relatively important to be able to get your gun apart. And honestly, until I got inside, dried it off, and even used the tool, I could not get the Glock apart. And that is where the Canik has another significant advantage, because although I didn't try it with the Canik, I can see mechanically it would be easier to get this pistol apart because there's a lot more grip surface to pull on there. So that's just something to think about. Some of the problems I had with either of these pistols. Honestly, not much. I've never really had any malfunctions that I didn't purposefully induce with mud or dirt in the Glock. Never had any in the Canik either. I've never had to send a Glock back for parts breakages that I didn't induce on purpose again. The Canik, nothing broke, no malfunctions. The gun was $350. Amazing price, amazing gun. Same goes for the Glock. So honestly, in this review, I would have to say if you're looking to spend a legitimate amount of money making a really good pistol, probably veer yourself more towards the Glock, especially due to magazine compatibility. If you're doing a WROL type situation, it's really likely that most of the people that you know are going to come in contact with that are going to have a firearm, it's probably going to be a Glock variant. So you might be able to use the same magazines, that kind of thing. Also with other, 9mm carbine stuff, a lot of times they use Glock magazines as well. So just the Glock basically being more popular for a number of years gives it an edge over the TP9. However, the TP9 is a serious edge over the Glock as far as being almost as good, if not as good, or even better in some cases, for much less money. So you take those two things in consideration and you judge for yourself which one that you think is better. Okay, so if it were me and I were just buying my first pistol, or I already owned a couple pistols and I didn't plan on shooting a ton of rounds and getting the best performance I could, I'm going to go with the TP9 all day. But if I had to choose one of these two for, let's say, USPSA, production division or something like that, I'm probably going to go with the Glock, because right now, as far as aftermarket accessories go, you can get a little bit more performance out of the Glock, but it's also for a lot more money. So, I hope you liked the video. Please like and subscribe if you liked it. If you like the channel, please help out your local homeless shelters, and remember to recycle. Check you later. Get out of that cardboard target right there. There's one in the tube.
Oh, Jesus! Fuck.
You're out.
Oh, that hurts so bad.
Pull it back. Dump one of those in there. Put it in that cardboard over there.
Ow!
Yeah, that one's a buckshot.
No, that wasn't very nice of you.
But it was entertaining.